Friends, in our previous video, we explored what it really means to live under grace. But now we arrive at another question that changes everything. Was the law ever actually meant to save humanity? Many people assume the law was God's system for salvation in the Old Covenant. Obey enough. Perform well enough. Keep the commandments faithfully enough, and maybe acceptance with God could finally be achieved. But Scripture paints a very different picture. Galatians chapter 2, verse 16 says, "A person is not justified by the works of the law, but through faith in Jesus Christ." The law was never designed to save humanity. It was designed to reveal humanity's need for salvation. That distinction changes the entire gospel. Because if the law was never meant to save, then salvation was never meant to come through human performance. From the very beginning, the law revealed God's holiness. It showed what righteousness looked like: justice, purity, perfection. But the moment fallen humanity stood beside that standard, something became painfully obvious. Romans chapter 3, verse 23 declares, "All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." Humanity could not reach the standard the law demanded. The law did not create sin. The law revealed sin. As Romans 3 verse 20 says, "Through the law comes the knowledge of sin." Like a mirror, the law exposes what is broken. But a mirror cannot heal what it reveals. The law could diagnose the condition, but it could not cure the disease. And this is where many people misunderstand the Old Covenant. God never gave the law because humanity was capable of saving itself. The law was given to expose humanity's inability to save itself. Galatians 3, verse 24 says, "The law became our guardian to lead us to Christ." Every sacrifice, every priest, every offering, every drop of blood pointed beyond itself toward something greater that was still coming. Hebrews 10, verse 1 says, "The law is only a shadow of the good things that are coming." The law was never the destination. It was preparation. It was a shadow pointing toward Christ, because the law could command righteousness. But it could not produce righteousness within fallen human hearts. It could define holiness, but it could not transform the sinner. That is why humanity remained trapped in the same cycle again and again. Sacrifice, failure, condemnation, fear, temporary covering, but never complete freedom. And then Jesus entered the story. What humanity could never achieve through the law, Christ fulfilled completely. He lived the perfect life the law demanded. Not one failure. Not one sin. Not one moment falling short. For the first time in human history, the law stood before a man who fulfilled it perfectly, and then something astonishing transpired. The one who fulfilled the law took upon himself the condemnation of those who broke it. At the cross, justice and mercy collided. Romans 8, verse 3 says, "What the law was powerless to do, because it was weakened by the flesh, God did by sending His own Son." The law exposed sin. Christ carried sin. The law demanded righteousness. Christ provided righteousness. The law revealed the problem. Jesus became the answer. This is why salvation has never been achieved through human effort. Not in the Old Covenant. Not now. Not ever. Even Abraham was counted righteous through faith long before Sinai. Genesis 15, verse 6 says, "Abraham believed the Lord, and He credited it to him as righteousness." Salvation has always depended on God's grace. The law was never the ladder humanity climbed to reach God. It was the light. A light revealing that humanity could never climb high enough. And once people understand that, the cross becomes infinitely more beautiful. Because Jesus did not come merely to improve humanity. He came to rescue humanity. The gospel is not about humanity saving itself through obedience. It is about God stepping into human failure and doing what humanity could never do alone. This is why believers no longer stand before God based on their performance. They stand before God clothed in the righteousness of Christ. That changes everything. Because now, the believer no longer obeys out of terror, trying to earn salvation. Obedience becomes the response to grace, not the condition for receiving grace. And this leads directly into our next video. Because once people realize the law was never meant to save, another huge question immediately rises to the surface. Then, what was the true purpose of the 10 Commandments? Were they temporary, eternal, moral only, and still binding exactly the same way today? And why does this question create so much confusion inside Christianity? In our next video, we are going to carefully unpack the true purpose of the 10 Commandments through the lens of the New Covenant. And once you see the bigger picture, many difficult passages suddenly begin making sense. Friends, you do not want to miss this next study. See you in the next video. Bye.